It's a shame about this affirmative action. And let me tell you, we got some really intelligent black Americans, honey. Black women are the most educated in this country, and they're trying to take that away from us so much. They are cutting black women jobs so much. And so many people are not speaking out on this, and this needs to be speaked out on. So they're saying that Asians, they're trying to end affirmative action. But the affirmative action already ended that I know of, unless they're trying to redo some stuff. But we're speaking on affirmative action and how it affects Black Americans, how it affects Asian Americans, and I believe they just use Asian Americans to try to get affirmative action out. You know, so and Asian Americans, look, y'all still got duped. Y'all still got effed up in the process because they were just using y'all to cause a fuss because they want all of us to fight amongst each other so they can divide and conquer. All right, well, check this video out.
So the Supreme Court overturned affirmative action, and I've been reading the decision. There's a lot going on here. This Supreme Court decision bans colleges and universities from considering race in a long list of other considerations for admission. I'm talking grades, test scores, extracurricular activities, whether or not your parents or grandparents went to this school, whether or not they donated to the school. There are dozens of big and small things that admissions officers can consider, and race is just one of them. But not anymore. They can't consider race anymore. Clarence Thomas argues in his concurring opinion that affirmative action stamps Black and Latino people with a badge of inferiority. He even makes the argument that these programs admit people who don't deserve to be there, saying that the environment may be too competitive, even though, again, the applicant's race is only one aspect in the holistic admissions process. And the thing that blows my mind is that even with the unfair advantage of affirmative action, the most selective schools are still extremely white. By a lot. Race-based affirmative action had already been prohibited in 9 other states, and prohibiting the consideration of race in admissions in those states resulted in a sharp decline in the enrollment of students from historically underrepresented groups. It's reasonable to expect that this decision from the Supreme Court will simply export this trend to the entire country. Justice Sotomayor had this to say in her dissenting opinion. The court subverts the constitutional guarantee of equal protection by further entrenching racial inequality in education, the very foundation of our democratic government and pluralistic society, because the court's opinion is not grounded in law or fact.
Now that affirmative actions.
I'm pretty sure everyone knows about this, but one of the schools that he's complaining he didn't get into because he's Asian was Berkeley. Berkeley is 40% Asian. I'm pretty sure he didn't get in because he's boring and had no extracurriculars. Girl!
So last week, the Supreme Court banned... Wait a minute, this ain't my channel. Hold on. Okay. Well, this is much better. What's up, y'all? I'm JJ. Many of you already know me, but my sister Lene asked me to come down here and handle some business for y'all this Friday. So, with that being said, I'm gonna keep it black. But I'm gonna keep it brief. Last week, the Supreme Court killed affirmative action. But did they really, though? Well, for all intents and purposes, yes. The Supreme Court ruled that the admission processes of UNC and Harvard both violated the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause. Now, this is a break from previous precedent, and it also calls into question a lot of things. In the 2003 case, Brunner v. Bollinger, the Supreme Court ruled that colleges can use race in their admission process as long as it's narrowly tailored and serves a compelling state interest. Narrowly tailored meaning it considers race as just one factor in a whole individual assessment and serves a compelling state interest by doing things like increasing diversity and getting more perspectives into colleges since they used to segregate. Now, many people have seen this screenshot of the Harvard admission process and deemed it discriminatory and problematic, and I personally agree. I don't think there should be this big of a discrepancy between the lowest decile of African American applicants and the highest decile of Asian Americans. But this case isn't just saying that Harvard and UNC got it wrong, it's saying that no college can use race in its admissions. This conclusion naturally comes with a bunch of concerns. In his concurrence, Justice Brett Kavanaugh seemed to imply that they weren't overturning previous precedent, they were applying previous precedent to this case, and they found what they found. If the problem was truly that these two colleges in particular were violating the 14th Amendment by breaking with the precedent established by other cases, then an application of that precedent should allow for other colleges to keep using race so as long as they're following that precedent. It's because the Supreme Court has decided we have beaten racism. You see conservatives absolutely ecstatic saying,
And they have to admit you based on your merit. Imagine that.
but that's just it. America is not, nor has it ever been, meritocracy. It doesn't matter that Justice Clarence Thomas has been on record him damn self praising affirmative action for his successes. It doesn't matter that we have data on what happens when affirmative action is banned. After California banned it in 1998, the 10,000 annual unrepresented minority applicants began attending lower quality California universities that did not improve student achievement. Degree attainment decreased, and wages, especially of Hispanics, declined by 5% annually between ages 24 and 34. In Florida, the amount of black student enrollment in college has steadily decreased since the ban on affirmative action in 1999, despite the amount of black high schoolers in Florida remaining the same. Not to mention the logic in this ruling could be applied to the workplace, and if it is, then that could directly hinder minority wages, which would directly hinder their ability to buy property, which would directly hinder the ability to provide quality education through public high school, which would call for affirmative action to be needed even more. It doesn't matter that the SAT, something that 20 states still require and that many universities still weigh when considering admissions, has proven racial bias against minority students. This is outside of socioeconomic status. And it doesn't matter that many selective universities already know that without affirmative action, they won't be able to maintain their current amount of diversity. Because remember, guys, we beat racism. Affirmative action, while not perfect, is an acknowledgement that the deck has been stacked against minorities through policy for no good reason, and completely trashing it assumes that we unstacked it. We have not. Hence why colorblind practices have never worked, no matter the intention. So the conservatives on the court can keep deluding themselves into believing that merits are what determine success. And by the way, we better see legacy admissions gone too if that's the case, but of course diversity was the thing that got attacked first. But as long as the government doesn't do the actual work to ensure it, we will continue to put butterfly band-aids over bullet wounds and then ripping them off.
So an article came out that said that since affirmative action has been overturned, in the case of Yale, Ivy League school Yale, the attendance rates for incoming Asian Americans has decreased, while the attendance rate for incoming Black students has remained the same as it was during affirmative action. This is crazy because Asian Americans were the ones who were bringing about lawsuits to get affirmative action overturned. If you were on Twitter in 2022, 2023, this was a lot of discord. A lot of Asian Americans had filed lawsuits saying that against schools saying that they did not get in because of their race, because their spot was given to a Black student because of affirmative action, not even realizing that you too, as a minority, benefit from affirmative action. In their head, they're European American, okay? They think that they're not a minority. And now we see with the first, I'm sure more stats are going to come out, but in the case of Yale, at the very least, it shows that while y'all were discrediting Black students for getting into schools, from their hard work, not because of affirmative action, y'all were really the ones who were needing affirmative action. Okay, y'all probably took some spots from Black kids because schools were trying to be quota to, good show. But we know in the case of Yale, Black students earned their spot. I love this for them. I love this for them because y'all wanted affirmative action to be, overturned so bad. Now look at the numbers. It's just so funny to me, like how these people come to Black ladies want our Black dollars, want to profit off of us, but this is really how they feel about us. Y'all can look up all the that Asian Americans were bringing against colleges, discrediting hardworking Black students who worked hard for their spot, who worked hard for their degrees.
Okay, real quick, pause this video and vote. The question is, can you be racist toward white people? Yes or no? Honest answer, not what you think I'm gonna say. You good? You voted? Okay. So I never thought you could be. Ever. And I don't mean that as some hot take either. Y'all know me better than that. I mean, it never registered as a debate to me. Like, it's like somebody asking if Tuesday can be purple. But what? What? Of course not. But this argument will not die. It's literally in my comments weekly. So today I just want to talk about it because I finally figured out what's actually happening in this debate. The two sides are answering different questions. That's literally it. That's the whole fight. Listen to the yes side sometime. Every example is a person, a coworker with a nasty attitude. Some girl on TikTok says she don't date white boys. And okay, people can absolutely be prejudiced against white people. Mean, hateful, unfair, all of it. Okay. If that's what you mean, fine. But that is not racism. Racism is not a person. Racism is a machine. Hear me out. And maybe it's because of what I do all day. Y'all know I live in these archives. But when I hear racism, when I hear the word racism, I don't picture some rude individual. I picture paperwork. Okay? The government drawing maps around Black neighborhoods so nobody could get a loan. The GI Bill office sending Black veterans home while it built white suburbs. The contracts, the highways, Tulsa. It's all machinery. You get me? Filing cabinets and signatures. That's the thing the word is for. So when somebody says racism against white people, my first question is, where's the machine now? Where? Like, genuinely, show me. Which years could white people not get loans for being white? Which neighborhoods did banks refuse because white people live there? What laws kept white people out of unions, off juries, out of careers? Where's the black-run court system? I'm not asking to be funny. I want an answer because you know I looked and we know it's not there. It does not exist and it never has. Somebody being mean to you is a punch. It's real. I guess it hurts. Whatever, you know, it's feelings. But racism is getting hit by a car and there's no car. Do you get me? You see where I'm going with this? Because there's not even a road, really. You can't get hit by a car on a street that they never built. That's it. That's why I never thought you could be racist towards white people. Not because I think white people can't be hurt, but because that word is carrying 400 years of machinery. And I'm not about to hand it over to describe somebody's bad attitude at lunch. Those are not the same thing. I'm not sitting up here trying to debate somebody's feelings in comparison to hundreds of years of housing policy, which, if I'm being real, is kind of the point of confusion. The machine loves being confused with a rude person. Oh, and for whoever's about to say, but the dictionary though. Fun fact, 2020, this 22-year-old named Kennedy Mitchum emails Merriam-Webster like, hey, your racism definition is missing the whole system part. And they read it and they go, you know what? You're right. And they changed it. The dictionary. She was 22. So even look it up is on my side now. Anyway, go look at your vote. If you said yes, the real question, no shade. Were you picturing a rude person? Because if that's all it was, we probably agree and you were just calling prejudice by the wrong name. If you said no, okay, but could you have expanded on why before this video? Or was it just a feeling? Let me know what y'all voted. Well, I guess I'll be able to see what you voted, really. But individually, I want to know what you voted. Don't be switching your vote like I can't count. I can count. Let me know.
A lawsuit against Harvard.
The outcome could affect the future of affirmative action.
Harvard's been sued for illegally discriminating against Asian Americans. The legal action forced the school to make its admissions data public for the first time. That did reveal that Asian applicants must score 22 points higher on the SAT than whites, 63 points higher than blacks. Nevertheless,
Harvard denies it discriminates against Asian Americans or any other group.
Harvard says race is just one factor among many.
That is just a lie.
Li Cheng supports the students suing the school.
Harvard didn't just use race as one of many factors. It was the determinative factor.
Harvard says many Americans of Asian descent don't get in because they score lower in personal attributes.
Harvard rated Asian Americans on personality, right, on subjective factors like likability and courage lower. This is because Asian Americans are boring little grade lovers. They just focus on getting good grades and good test scores. I can categorically say that's bullshit.
If you only look at grades and test scores, it looks like a lot of discrimination against Asians.
Economist Harry Holzer, who went to Harvard, defends the school.
Asians are not interesting? They don't have interesting qualities?
The personal ratings reflect a wide range of characteristics. Now, it's possible. It's possible that some of that is anti-Asian bias. You certainly can't prove that.
No, I don't think they're discriminating against Asians. But I assume they're discriminating for blacks and Latinos because there's been a history of discrimination.
I wouldn't label it discrimination. I would label it as leveling the playing field. I mean,
if that's discrimination?
No, it's race conscious assistance. And when you have a long history of discrimination based on race, you have to take race into account.
Hasn't Harvard, like lots of other schools, been deceitful about what they're doing? They basically lied for years.
I don't know if they were putting their own spin.
This case is expected to get to the Supreme Court, and the new court may ban racial preference. If that happens,
you'll see a large increase in the white student population, and you see a precipitous decline in the black and Latino student population, about 50%.
50% decline in those of color.
Harvard would be a less interesting place if that happened.
There are many, many different ways to achieve diversity without discriminating against Asian Americans. The reality is that race-focused affirmative action helps rich people. 70% of the students of every ethnic group at Harvard come from the top 20% of family income.
I think it's okay that some of the minorities admitted under affirmative action come from higher income families. Race in America matters at any level of income.
The groups that are harmed the most are actually poor whites and poor Asians.
Chang is passionate about ending racial preferences because when he was in the 8th grade, he applied to San Francisco's Lowell High School.
I was just shocked when I found out I had to score higher than kids of any other ethnic group because I'd just taken civics. I was just taught in civics and history that in America, everybody was supposed to be equal under the law.
Lowell High School excels in everything from music to math.
Chang got into that high school, but
the kids who were negatively affected were the kids of the dishwashers and the seamstresses who lived in Chinatown, who were very poor.
Chang later went to Harvard. He became a lawyer and successfully sued San Francisco over its race-based preference.
So we got rid of the quotas in San Francisco.
You Asians, we white people, we're doing well in America. We don't need extra help, but some other groups do, and there's a history of nasty discrimination against them. Isn't it Harvard's job to try to make up for some of that?
The right path out of the history of discrimination against individuals based on race is not more discrimination based on race. I have 3 kids, and I'll be damned if I'm going to not fight very, very hard to make sure that they don't get treated as second-class citizens in the land in which they were born.
Okay, so
I'm not gonna lie, I'm still pissed about those Asian Americans who helped that white man get rid of affirmative action. And it didn't even benefit us in the end. Unsurprisingly. So I need Asian Americans to remember that none of this was ever built for us. The lawsuit that ended affirmative action was not started by Asian Americans. It was led by Edward Bloom, a white conservative activist who has spent years just trying to dismantle civil rights protections because that's the type of person he is. He created Students for Fair Admissions and specifically recruited Asian American plaintiffs to frame this narrative as Harvard discriminates against Asians, but this was never about helping us. It was about using us, as always, about using us to attack policies designed to create equity and level the playing field. Now, you have probably seen a lot of people saying that affirmative action lowers the bar. Oh, DEI also lowers the bar. They're not the same thing, but people think they are. That is so misleading, and it's rooted in anti-blackness. Also, are we noticing the percentage of white people admitted and the overwhelmingly white legacy admissions at these institutions is something that specifically never gets touched in this conversation? Why is that? Is it clicking? So here's some facts from the case. So Asian students did have the highest GPAs and test scores, but got rated lower on personal qualities by the admissions officers. And for identical profiles, Asian applicants had a 25% chance of getting in, while Black applicants had a 95% chance. And that stat gets weaponized to imply that Black students are less qualified. But affirmative action isn't lowering the standard. It's about addressing systemic inequities caused by racist policies like housing discrimination, segregated schools, and the wealth gap, etc. This is classic model minority propaganda portraying Asian Americans as proof that racism is over to justify attacking other communities. That is exactly why they ended the immigration ban against Asians in the U.S. and then only allowed in high-achieving Asians from Asia, scientists, doctors, etc., to come to the U.S. so that they could use us to prove that they weren't racist to Black people during the Cold War. I need you to pay attention to historical context about how this has all gone down. History is rhyming. It's the same thing. Here's the thing. I want to say that 69% of Asian Americans actually support affirmative action, and advocacy groups like Chinese for Affirmative Action and CIRAC fought to keep it. The loudest anti-affirmative action voices do not represent all of the Asian community. They do represent a narrative designed to divide us, though. And for Asian Americans, especially young Asian Americans, I need you to hear me. Even though many in our community do not align with the model minority nonsense, I can attest to that being true, the ones who do are often the ones that get the most visibility because playing that role perpetuates white supremacy. And at the end of the day, we have to be real about all of this. None of this was ever for us anyways. This country literally had laws banning us from being here. We have always been seen as outsiders. We have only ever been used as a tool, a wedge to uphold white supremacy, and then they will scapegoat us the second they need to. That has always happened in times of sickness, war, and a loss of jobs. And it is on us to disrupt that role, to stop aligning with anti-Blackness, and to refuse to be used as puppets for systems that were never built for us anyway. It is imperative that we, as Asian Americans, learn our history, learn how we've been used, understand it, and choose solidarity. Because if we're not fighting these systems together, we are always on the chopping block. Remember how they treated us during COVID. Until next time, y'all.
God, Republicans are now going after minority scholarships. Robin Voss, who's a speaker of the Wisconsin State Assembly, promised that they'd be relooking in the fall at different programs that have scholarships, grants, and programs. But look at who's going to be targeted. Black Americans, American Indians, Hispanic individuals, and people from Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia. The Supreme Court's decision didn't just repeal affirmative action. It's now made it so Republicans will go after any type of diversity in higher education.
Okay, so breaking news. The U.S. Supreme Court has just ruled that colleges and universities can no longer consider race when it comes to admissions. Affirmative action is officially dead when it comes to education. And I want all of us to remember this moment when the same kids who were originally tweeting about how affirmative action kept them out of school, and then they realize that affirmative action is gone and they're still not making it into the schools, but the legacies are making it into the schools. The Aunt Becky's kids, and y'all know who those are making it into the schools. The kids whose parents bought a building made it into the schools, and you're still not. And you don't have the cover of affirmative action to hide under and say, well, the Black kids made it. Why didn't I? Remember this moment right here.
Hey there, friends, and good morning. This morning, the Supreme Court has struck down affirmative action. What is affirmative action? Affirmative action was a program of positive action undertaken with conviction and effort to overcome the present effects of past practices, policies, or barriers to equal opportunity, and to achieve the full and fair participation of women, minorities, and individuals with disabilities found to be underutilized based on availability. So the case that came before the court was Students for Fair Admissions v. Harvard. The lawsuit alleged that the Ivy League University's race-conscious admissions process discriminated against Asian applicants. And the court ruled that Harvard already has very strict standards for admission to their school, and that the use of race in determining admissions to college is outdated and being used negatively to affect others. Now, what is concerning to experts is that Black and Latino admissions to Harvard has dropped, and Native Hawaiian and Native American applicants are also down this year, while Harvard admitted a record number of Asian Americans. That number is up 2.1% from last year, and just about 30% of admitted applicants identify as Asian American. The court noted that they used to affirm the principles of affirmative action, but it's basically gone too far. Quote, the programs lack sufficiently focused and measurable objectives warranting the use of race, unavoidably employ race in a negative manner, involve racial stereotyping, and lack meaningful endpoints. Those admission programs cannot be reconciled with the guarantees of the Equal Protection Clause. I'll have more later today.
One of the reasons white people, Black people, is because we cannot tolerate Black joy. We cannot tolerate Black intelligence. We cannot tolerate Black beauty. We cannot tolerate Black confidence. We cannot tolerate Black camaraderie. We cannot tolerate anything that frees a Black person. There's a level of that I think hits differently for Black people than it does for Asian people, or Hispanic people, or Middle Eastern people, or Native Americans even. Each one of those things that people think regarding other races are different with Black people. Because again, we don't like Black people to be educated. We don't like them to be successful. We don't want Black judges. We don't want anything for Black people that doesn't directly affect and entertain us. So we can have a Black nanny, we can have a Black house cleaner, we can have a Black teacher, we can have a Black coach, we can have Black players, but only for the specific things that we feel comfortable. I think about all those sweet children that have been killed when they go out with their white friends, and I think that as much as the trauma of comes down through the DNA, I think also the cruelty of the desire to hurt, the desire to steal and humiliate and torment and disappear Black people is what comes down through the DNA. I think when you do something like that for long enough and you pass it down for the many years that slavery and enslaved people were in chains, that is an instinct with us, cruelty. And I think you can see it in many videos. Little white women and white men are telling black kids and black families to get the hell out of here, you don't belong. We just don't want you to have more than us. We just don't want you to be prettier. We don't want you to be the beauty standard. We don't want you to be judges or anything like that. We want you to be beneath us. And we've tried so hard to keep you down, and we failed so badly because, like Maya Angelou said, still you rise. We may you, we may beat you, we may do those things, and it makes us crazy that you keep coming back and getting better. We can't stand it. I don't know why that is. White people are the ones that have the ancestors that were closely related to the apes. And I believe that. We are so similar to Cro-Magnon man, Neanderthals. We're pale monsters. I really hate being white sometimes. I'm super ashamed. I think the cruelty lives in us. It comes down as instinct.
The United States Supreme Court has just ended affirmative action.
The next college admission cycle is actually going to be one of the most interesting to watch because people are finally going to realize what systemic oppression means. So while you had all this smoke for the 5% of black kids that were getting accepted into Ivies, but none for the 30% of legacy admits, you're still not getting a spot. I really don't understand how you thought that this would help you. Your 1600 4.0, nobody in the family has ever attended an Ivy before, is not going to measure up to the 1500 3.7, my daddy's last name is on the library. So many of y'all are about to find out what systemic oppression means because you messed around, and the more you mess around, the more you're going to find out.
Child, don't you just love a Uno reverse, skip, draw full? Baby, my grandma would say, what don't come out in the wash will come out in the rinse. And it's rinsing real hard right now. See, they rolled back DEI and cut out affirmative action altogether because, baby, they swore that black folks was taking up spots we didn't deserve. And y'all remember the Asian lawsuit? Yeah, sue the institutions for affirmative action because the blacks are taking up the spots. Baby, they thought they was next in line. Child, they beat their own self in the ass. Yeah, they did. And did what white folks have been wanting to do for decades. But the joke's on them because the data is data-ing. Yeah, it is. Asian enrollment in elite schools, down. Men, especially white men, steep decline. And it's not because they're not applying. And baby, black folks moseying along, doing what we've always been doing. But what they didn't understand is this. DEI and affirmative action had nothing to do with black folks being unqualified. They was believing the hype. Nothing. We've been trained to be twice as good. Sometimes 3 and 4 times as good. Child, if you look at any of our accomplishments, just know nothing, and I mean nothing, was handed to us with a silver spoon. We had to push and shove to get there with more than enough education and qualifications. What we didn't always have was access. DEI and affirmative action have nothing to do with qualifications. And we weren't even the biggest benefactors of either one. Many colleges and universities have what is called bridge program. They fill the gap between exposure and opportunity. If your family's always been to college, everyone has always gotten their master's and PhDs, you're a legacy. You know the path. But if you're first gen, there is no path. Affirmative action built the path. Not just for black folk, but for Asian folks, poor white folks, rural communities, immigrants, women, those with disabilities, and a whole lot of other people. And now, baby, I don't even know. I just know this ain't our fight. The ancestors said, stand down and watch, because the roosters, baby, they are coming home to roost. So get your popcorn. This is only the beginning. All right, black folks. Drink your water, stay rooted, real, and knowledgeable, and mind your black business. Happy Black History 365, and I'll see you next time.
Today, a school does not want to admit me because I'm Asian American, then there's not much I can do about that because it's a part of me that I just can't get rid of.
Some of y'all just learned the hard way. You were not the competition. A lot of people really thought getting rid of affirmative action was going to give them more opportunities. If you move more black people out of the way, suddenly you the next person in line. No, that's not how this works. What you fail to understand is this. Black Americans weren't just in the race. We were the ones fighting to make sure that the race was fair in the first place. That wasn't competition. That was infrastructure. It's like seeing somebody hold a ladder steady and you kick it thinking you about to climb faster. Now the ladder gone and everybody on the ground. And here's the part that really stings. You thought removing black people would make all this easier. All it did was show you they weren't holding you back. They just weren't planning to let you in either. So I want to ask y'all, do you think this was a miscalculation by people who wanted to get rid of this? And now they're waking up to realizing who was actually on their side? Because I know I don't think folks are waking up at all. And if anything, they're still confused about how come I didn't get it.
Today is a sad day in the United States, especially for Latino and Black students. The Supreme Court has struck down affirmative action, and these are some of the students that will be disproportionately harmed. Affirmative action was created to help remedy historical discrimination, and it helped create more diverse student bodies. Race was allowed to be taken into consideration during the admissions process with other factors like test scores, grades, and extracurricular activities. No, it never gave Black or Latino students an unfair advantage because even with increases of Black and Latino students with affirmative action, we were still underrepresented. We should expect to see a sharp drop in the number of Black and Latino students to the most selective schools.
The Supreme Court is obviously not here to work for the American people. The Supreme Court is not here to serve our democracy or our Constitution. The Supreme Court is here to serve oligarchs. They're here to serve billionaires. They're here to serve large corporations. They're here to serve white supremacy and white patriarchy and nativism. Their decision to strike down Joe Biden's student debt cancellation policy is strictly political, and it does exactly what we have all seen them doing over the last several months. They want to take away our civil rights. They want to take away our voting rights, our human rights, women's rights. They want to make our country more dangerous by expanding concealed carry permits. They don't want Black people to be educated. That's why they banned universities' ability to use race in admissions decisions. They are taking lavish trips with billionaires and taking gifts from billionaires and allowing billionaires to pay their tuition to their children's schools. The Supreme Court is illegitimate. It is corrupt. It needs reform, expansion, ethics reform, term limits. And we need complete democracy reform at every level of government. But none of this happens if we don't have 100% of the American people voting in every single election next year. For president, for Senate, for House, and all the local elections. We don't got time to complain and whine and stay home and say it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for you or us because we're all not exercising our power. This Supreme Court is an extremist right-wing court. Donald Trump selected 3 Supreme Court justices. Voting matters. Mitch McConnell did not allow President Obama to appoint someone to the Supreme Court. Voting matters. We do not have George Floyd justice in policing. We cannot codify Roe v. Wade. We can't do anything on gun reform because we do not have the right people in office. There are 33 Senate seats up for grabs. We need transformational legislative change in our country. We need a new constitutional convention that includes all people, women, people of color, LGBTQ, everyone. Not just white patriarch oligarchs. You want to transform and change our country? We got to do it together starting right now. Save the country, save democracy, save the planet, save the world. That's the mission. And it's going to take all of us. Peace.
And this will be controversial, but I hope you'll hear me out at the end. I attended Harvard twice for undergrad and for business school, and I fully support affirmative action and need to address this false narrative that Asians don't want affirmative action. I resent my race being hijacked to make the case for ending diversity. The Asian American admissions experience has been a primary focus of the current Supreme Court lawsuit, which I really resent because it's been orchestrated by Edward Bloom, a white man who has a track record of wanting to end diversity and inclusion in other areas of American life as well. You know, he initially took a white plaintiff before to the Supreme Court against the University of Texas and failed. And so he decided he needed Asian plaintiffs. And so he advertised for them. And now Asian Americans are being used as a wedge against other communities of color. The Harvard Asian American Association and the Asian Alumni Association are both pro-affirmative action. Harvard cannot create a campus that is diverse enough to fulfill its educational mission without considering race as just one factor among many factors. I mean, we've seen massive declines in minority admissions at universities when affirmative action is eliminated. And higher education and these institutions are pipelines to leadership in our society, a society that's still, unfortunately, far from equal and just, one that still has a lot of work to do to close racial disparities and combat systemic racism, one that all of that became painfully clear for this nation with the Black Lives Matter movement. There are racial disparities in education going back centuries in this country. And today, if you're Black, you are more likely to be in an under-resourced school, but also more likely to be viewed as having less academic potential. I mean, yes, in an ideal world, race wouldn't be considered in admissions because in that ideal world, everyone would have access to the same kinds of resources and there'd be no systemic racism. But that is unfortunately not the world yet that we live in today. So what can we do now? I mean, it unfortunately does seem inevitable that affirmative action will be struck down this year. So what's the point of all of this? For one, I think it's important for Asian Americans to speak out, versus just simply being used as a pawn in a political battle. I'm also surprised that more people generally aren't speaking out. Again, given higher education's then trickle-on impact on future employment opportunities, income potential, leadership roles. This also shows how much voting matters. Please vote in the midterms next week. Early voting has started. Lawmakers have the power to reverse things like the impact of the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action or Roe v. Wade.
DEI. We're hearing a lot about DEI. What is DEI? The way that I understand it is that it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Before DEI, there was affirmative action. And affirmative action was, I'm going to say passed in the 1960s because it was very flip-flop with white and minorities, mostly Black people. The way of living, the opportunities were very upside down. And so the affirmative action was passed in the 1960s to bring up minorities to come close or to meet where white U.S. citizens was. And that's the reason why, there was a lot of push for affirmative action in schools because, Black students didn't have the same opportunities and learn the same things as white kids. The same thing in jobs. There was a push for programs to make sure that the minorities had the tools to qualify for jobs and things like that. So removing DEI, removing affirmative action means those programs can, and if they're federally funded, they all go away. And that means that there's a potential of the U.S. coming flip-flop again, because traditionally white Americans have always had the income, the education, the opportunities more than minorities. So removing DEI, removing affirmative action kind of can put us in that place that was in the 60s, which is why they created affirmative action. Now, the other thing that it does is, like, say for a job, say there's 3 qualified people, a white man, a Black man, and an Asian woman. Well, a lot of jobs, whether they publicize it or not, they kind of had quotas, or they want to be politically correct. They want to be in good standings with the government and, everyone else. So again, they all equally are qualified. I'm not saying someone is getting a job and they don't qualify. I'm not saying that. So they would have to consider, okay, the white man, we don't get any brownie points hiring him. The black man, oh, okay, he's a man, so men, we don't get any brownie points there, but we get a brownie point for him being black. But this Asian woman, oh, we get two brownie points. She's a woman, so she's a minority, and she is Asian. That's another brownie point. She is a minority. And so they wouldn't likely hire her in this situation. So removing DEI and affirmative action, they can just give it to the white guy and not even consider the other two equally qualified candidates, because there's no longer being politically correct. There's no longer a quota that they have to reach to make sure that they stay in good standings with the federal government and with society. So that is my explanation. Let me know in the comments if you feel like I've misstated anything or, or anything like that. But that's how I see it and what I believe. Y'all take care.